The rain was hammering down, a relentless drumbeat against the roof of my little craftsman bungalow. The kind of storm that made you feel like the world was trying to drown you. I stood at my kitchen window, coffee mug trembling in my hand, staring at the lock on my front gate new, shiny, and wrong. It wasn't mine. The HOA had done it again. Karen, the self-appointed queen of Willow Creek Homeowners Association, had sent her minions to change my gate lock without a whisper of warning. My breath hitched, a sharp stab of fury cutting through the fog of my sleepless night. They thought they could trap me in my own home, bend me to their petty rules. They didn't know I'd been ready for them. It started 3 months ago, when I painted my mailbox a bright, unapologetic red. The HOA's rulebook, a tome thicker than a Bible and twice as sanctimonious, declared mailboxes must be neutral tones: beige, gray, black, colors as lifeless as Karen's smile at the annual community picnic. I ignored the first warning letter, tossed it in the trash with a laugh. The second came with a fine, $200, for noncompliance. By the third, Karen herself showed up, her blonde bob unmoving in the summer breeze, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness that made my skin crawl. "We're a community, Mia," she'd said, clutching her clipboard like a shield. "We follow rules to keep things nice." I'd slammed the door in her face, the sound echoing like a gunshot. That's when the war began. Every week, a new complaint. My roses were too wild. My porch light was too bright. My dog, Rusty, a scruffy mutt with a bark louder than a freight train, was a disturbance. Each time, I fought back. I trimmed the roses, but left one thorn branch jutting out just enough to snag Karen's pristine white slacks. I swapped the porch light for a motion sensor floodlight that blazed like the sun every time she walked by. Rusty, I taught him to bark louder when her car rolled past. But the lock change, that was a new low, even for her. It wasn't just about control, Anna Marie, it was personal. I grabbed my phone. The screen's glow harsh against the dim kitchen. My security app blinked with notifications. The cameras I'd installed after Karen's last stun, a $500 fine for unapproved landscaping when I planted a native wildflower garden, had caught everything. At 2:17 a.m., under the cover of darkness, 2 figures in hoodies had crept up to my gate. One held a flashlight, its beam jittery, while the other swapped out the lock with practiced ease. I froze the frame, zoomed in. The flashlight guy's face was half hidden, but I'd know that smug jawline anywhere. Todd, Karen's husband, the HOA treasurer who always smelled faintly of cheap cologne and cheaper whiskey. The other, a stranger, some hired hand. My heart pounded, a wild rhythm matching the storm outside. They thought they could lock me out, humiliate me, make me beg. They didn't know I had them on tape. I pulled on my raincoat, the fabric cold and slick against my skin, and stepped into the downpour. The air smelled of wet earth and ozone, sharp and alive. My boots splashed through puddles as I marched to the gate, Rusty trailing behind, his ears perked despite the rain. The new lock gleamed, mocking me. I tugged at it, the metal biting into my fingers, unyielding. A sigh escaped me, heavy with the weight of months of fighting. I wasn't just fighting Karen, I was fighting the whole system. The suffocating rules that tried to sand down anything that didn't fit their perfect little mold. But I wasn't about to break. Back inside, I uploaded the footage to my laptop, the hum of the machine a quiet comfort in the chaos. I watched the video again, frame by frame, the timestamp burning into my brain. 2:17 a.m. Cowards. I sent a copy to my cloud drive, then another to my lawyer, Sarah, a pit bull in heels who'd been itching to take on the HOA since they'd tried to bully her client into selling his house for aesthetic violations. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, itching to post the video online, to expose Karen's dirty tricks to the whole neighborhood. But no, that was too easy. I wanted her to squirm, to feel the walls closing in like I had. The next morning, the rain had stopped, leaving the air heavy and thick. I drove to the sheriff's office, the USB drive with the footage burning a hole in my pocket. The office smelled of stale coffee and old paper, the kind of place where time moved slower. Deputy Ramirez, a guy I'd known since high school, leaned back in his chair, his badge glinting under the fluorescent lights. "Mia, you sure you want to stir this pot?" he asked, one eyebrow raised. I slid the USB across the desk, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. "They broke into my property. Changed my lock. I'm not stirring anything. They started the fire." He plugged in the drive, watched the footage, and let out a low whistle. "Karen's gonna have a bad day." While Ramirez filed the report, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to pick up. "Mia?" The voice was shaky, unfamiliar, with a faint southern drawl. "This is Ellen. I live on Oak Street. I saw what they did to your gate." My grip tightened on the phone. Ellen was new, a quiet widow who kept to herself. Her house always dark by 8 p.m. "I have cameras too," she whispered. "Caught Todd sneaking around my yard last week, spraying weed killer on my daisies." I didn't say anything because, well, you know how Karen is. My blood ran cold. It wasn't just me. Karen and her cronies were waging war on anyone who didn't bow down. Ellen's confession was the spark I needed. I invited her over, and we sat in my living room, the smell of fresh coffee mingling with Rusty's damp fur. She was nervous, her hands twisting the hem of her sweater, but her eyes burned with the same anger I felt. "I thought I was alone," she said, her voice breaking. "I moved here for peace, not this." I showed her my footage, and she showed me hers. Todd, clear as day, dousing her garden with poison, his face twisted in a smirk. We made a plan. We'd take it all to the next HOA meeting. Let the whole neighborhood see what their leaders were doing. The meeting was held in the community center, a sterile room that smelled of bleach and bad decisions. Karen stood at the podium, her smile as polished as ever, her voice dripping with fake warmth as she droned on about community standards. I sat in the back, Ellen beside me, both of us clutching our phones like weapons. The room was packed. Neighbors I'd never spoken to, people who'd whispered about my rebellious streak but never dared say it to my face. When Karen opened the floor for comments, I stood, my heart thumping so loud I swore everyone could hear it. "Karen," I said, my voice cutting through the room like a blade. "You changed my gate lock without permission. Trespassed on my property. I've got it all on camera." A murmur rippled through the crowd, heads turning. Karen's smile faltered, just for a second, but it was enough. I held up my phone, the video queued up, and hit play. The projector screen lit up with Todd and his accomplice, their faces unmistakable. Gasps filled the room, followed by angry whispers. Karen's face went white, her hands gripping the podium like she might collapse. Then Ellen stood, her voice trembling but strong. "It's not just Mia. They killed my garden. I have proof too." She played her video, and the room erupted. Neighbors shouted, demanding answers. Todd, sitting in the front row, shrank in his seat, his face red as a beet. Karen tried to regain control, her voice shrill now, insisting it was a misunderstanding. But the evidence was undeniable, and the crowd wasn't buying it. Ramirez stepped in, badge gleaming, his presence silencing the room. "Karen, Todd, you're coming with me. Trespassing and vandalism are serious charges." The sheriff's deputies escorted them out, Karen's protests fading into the hum of the crowd. I caught her eye as she passed, and for the first time, I saw fear in her perfect, controlled facade. It felt like justice, sharp and sweet, like the first breath after being underwater too long. In the weeks that followed, the HOA was dismantled. A new board was elected, one that cared more about people than power. Ellen and I became friends, bonded by our shared fight. My gate got a new lock, one I chose, one I controlled. Rusty still barked at passing cars, but now it felt like a victory cry. The neighborhood wasn't perfect, but it was free, and that was enough. Standing on my porch one evening, the air cool and smelling of jasmine, I looked out at the street. The red mailbox stood proud, a defiant splash of color against the beige conformity. I'd fought for my place here, for my right to exist as I was, thorns and all, and I'd won. The cameras were still rolling, just in case. But for now, the war was over. I took a deep breath, let it out slow. and smiled. Sometimes, the little guy wins. Sometimes, justice feels like a storm breaking, washing the world clean.